Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a truly incredible breakthrough coming from the open source AI community. It's a new system called AutoAct. Now, if you've been following the AI space even a little bit recently, you know that large language models are incredibly capable. But getting them to actually autonomously plan out tasks, use tools, and correct their own mistakes, well, that usually means handing over all your private data to closed-source giants like OpenAI's GPT-4. But what if an open-source AI could learn how to do all of that entirely from scratch on its own? That is exactly what we're going to explore today.
So let's just start with a simple thought experiment. Would you ever hire one single person to be the CEO, the accountant, the lead software engineer, and the janitor of your entire company? I mean, of course not, right? That would be a complete disaster. A jack of all trades might be okay at a few things, but they'd get completely overwhelmed trying to juggle every single highly specialized task at once. But honestly, that's exactly how we've been building our AI agents. The traditional approach literally forces a single language model to do absolutely everything. We ask it to break down the problem, figure out which external tools to use, write the code, and reflect on its own mistakes. It's a massively overburdened single model. AutoAct, though, proposes something entirely different: a specialized AI team.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the one-model AI bottleneck, then look at a really cool stem cell analogy, dive into how AutoAct actually works, see some real-world AI teamwork, go over the results and limits, and finally talk about why this breakthrough actually matters.
Let's kick things off with Part 1, the one-model AI bottleneck. To really understand why current AI agents are hitting a wall, the researchers point us to a foundational concept from economics and cognitive science. It's called bounded rationality, and it was formulated by Herbert Simon. Put simply, it means that a precise division of labor makes up for an individual's limited ability to process information. We all have limits, right? AI has them too. So when we force one single AI model to do all the planning, the tool invocation, and the reflection, we are completely ignoring this basic principle. We're creating this massive cognitive bottleneck that basically prevents the AI from solving really complex multi-step problems.
Moving right along to Part 2, the stem cell AI analogy. This is where the paper gets super fascinating, because the way AutoAct solves this bottleneck is actually inspired by biology. On the left here, we start with a generic meta-agent. Think of it exactly like a biological stem cell. It starts off with a ton of general capability, but it has no specific job yet. Through a process the researchers actually call differentiation, this single meta-agent divides and specializes into a team of distinct sub-agents, which you can see on the right. Just like a stem cell eventually becomes a heart cell or a brain cell, the meta-agent splits itself up to create that exact division of labor we were just talking about.
All right, Part 3, how AutoAct actually works. The wildest part about this is that the whole division process happens completely automatically. Let's look at the high-level pipeline. Step 1 is the input. The system just needs a very limited handful of basic examples of a task, no massive, expensive datasets required. Step 2 is the process. The meta-agent runs a technique called self-instruct to generate its very own practice data, and it automatically picks out which tools, like a calculator or a web search, it might need. And finally, Step 3 is the output. Based on all that self-generated practice, it undergoes self-differentiation to actually build its specialized team.
So who exactly makes up this team? Well, the system creates 3 highly specialized sub-agents. First, you've got the plan agent. Its only job in the world is to strategize and break down complex questions. Second is the tool agent, which is completely dedicated to writing the code needed to invoke external tools. And third, the reflect agent. This one acts like quality assurance. It reviews past mistakes and verifies the final answers. And the AI creates these 3 distinct personalities from the original meta-agent using a really lightweight, parameter-efficient training method.
I know that's a lot of theory we just covered, so let's zoom out for a second and take a look at the full architectural pipeline to trace this whole journey.
Okay, let's walk through this flowchart. Starting up on the top left, you have your limited task information coming in. The pink meta-agent takes that and does its self-instruct to build up a database of practice questions. Moving down, it automatically selects its tools from a library. Next, the meta-agent attempts those practice questions to synthesize what they call trajectories, which is basically just the AI logging its own successful and failed attempts. Down at the bottom left, it filters out the good trajectories and uses them to differentiate into our 3 specialists: plan, tool, and reflect. And finally, over on the far right, we arrive at the end goal, group planning, where these 3 specific agents converse and work together to solve a brand new problem.
And honestly, this highlights the crowning achievement of the whole paper. The outcome here is a fully autonomous, open-source AI team.
It self-organizes. It doesn't need thousands of hours of expensive human-labeled data. And more importantly, it doesn't need to send thousands of API calls to closed-source models like GPT-4 just to learn how to plan. It literally teaches itself.
Let's look at part 4, real-world AI teamwork.
So what does this actually look like when it's running? The researchers tested the system on a benchmark called Hotpot QA. This involves really complex, multi-hop questions. For example, imagine giving an AI a prompt asking, what city are these two specific buildings located in? A single overburdened model might just hallucinate an answer or get totally confused. But with AutoAct, it's like a relay race. The plan agent steps up and says, okay, first we need to find the addresses of both buildings. It passes the baton to the tool agent, which writes a query to search Wikipedia and pulls the raw text. The plan agent synthesizes that data. And then the reflect agent steps in to verify, saying, does the retrieved text actually prove they are in New York City? Yes, the answer is correct. It's incredibly structured.
Which brings us to part 5, the results, and of course, the limits.
So the whole relay race concept sounds amazing in theory, but does it actually perform better than the old single model way? Well, the researchers pitted AutoAct against a really strong baseline called FireAct, and they used the exact same open source Llama 70B model as the foundation for both. The results? AutoAct beat the single agent FireAct model by 5.77% on the Hotpot QA benchmark and by a massive 6.67% on the Science QA benchmark. That is a huge deal. It definitively proves that applying a true division of labor to open source AI isn't just some neat conceptual trick. It genuinely creates significantly more accurate systems.
To prove exactly why it works so well, the authors ran an ablation study, which basically just means turning off parts of the system one by one to see what breaks. When they removed the reflect agent, performance dropped by nearly 3%. But check this out. When they removed the multi-agent setup entirely and reverted to a single agent, performance absolutely plummeted by almost 6%. So the data firmly backs up that this team-based division of labor is the secret sauce driving these gains.
But look, it's not absolutely perfect. And we always want to be fair about the limitations. The researchers found that having a dedicated reflect agent is a bit of a double-edged sword. On highly complex problems, it's amazing. But on very simple questions, the reflect agent can actually over-verify. It'll just keep checking and checking its own work, which dumps huge blocks of text into the system's memory. Eventually, that long context window confuses the model, and it can literally lose track of what the original question even was.
And finally, part 6, why this breakthrough actually matters.
Even with that little quirk, the implications here are massive. The researchers sum it up perfectly in the paper, saying AutoAct paves the way for automatic agent learning with open source models from scratch. Why should you care? One word, privacy. Up until now, if a hospital, a law firm, or just a private user wanted top-tier AI planning, they generally had to route their highly sensitive data through big tech APIs to use models like GPT-4. AutoAct proves that you can just download a raw open-source model, feed it a few examples, and let it self-organize into a highly capable, completely private team right there on your local server. Which leaves us with a pretty wild thought to end on. We've just seen that an AI can act like a stem cell, self-differentiating into specialized roles to perfectly tackle complex tasks without any human handholding. So, if an AI can now build its own perfect team from scratch to solve the problems we give it today, what happens tomorrow when it learns to create new, specialized agents for problems it identifies on its own? It's a fascinating thing to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.